Folks, today we're going to talk about frivolous lawsuits. And that could be McDonald's and hot coffee, but we're going to have a fun time regardless. So, three major takeaways. Brandon, you're going to tell us what this means, this crazy word, frivolous lawsuits. If I go and Google it, I feel like I'm even more confused. Then take us through, number two is going to be take us through some examples. Give me one that was and give me one that wasn't. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing, if folks out there are saying, I don't even want to call the firm because this is so, like, they're going to laugh at me. What does that person really do? So why don't you start off and tell us what it's all about? What does it mean? What's the definition?
Absolutely. Well, it is a very hot topic and a very interesting, attention-grabbing word, frivolous, because people either think there's way too much litigation in attorneys, which there probably is, and there's also legislation that's often geared almost in every state to try to curb what a frivolous lawsuit is. So first thing is, what is a frivolous lawsuit? That is a lawsuit against someone else that has zero legal standing, none. So there are no facts that give rise to anything that would be recoverable under the law, state or federal law. Each state has some variation of what a frivolous lawsuit is and looks like. Okay. And lawyers that bring those frivolous lawsuits, meaning suits that have zero facts that could ever give rise under the law of any recovery. That's a frivolous lawsuit. Anything that fits within that, there are mechanisms and laws against bringing suits like that, such that if a lawyer like me or anyone were to bring a frivolous lawsuit, there's penalty. You can't do that. And so a lot of times the misconception can be, is this frivolous? Is it not frivolous? And usually you don't know until you start getting into the case to see whether or not it's actually frivolous, or where you start getting more information about what happened. And what we do is catastrophic work where somebody's wrongfully hurt, terribly hurt, or killed. And that's never frivolous in the sense that we want to listen and hear like what happened. But it can be frivolous if there's not any facts under the law to support a recovery, independent of how bad somebody's injured.
Got it.
So frivolous is a big buzzword. Like frivolous lawsuit, like people want to say we need to change our laws so there are less frivolous lawsuits. But as you mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of times where you get into a case and you just see there's more here than a frivolous lawsuit.
Where do we usually see those? Is it restaurant industry? Is it business? Like, who's getting them?
Well, frivolous lawsuits are everywhere.
Okay.
And frivolous lawsuits, whether it's a commercial dispute or whether it's a bad injury case, there are always these instances where a case just should not go forward. And our courts certainly don't appreciate it because they're busy enough with their own dockets. So
serious stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, like massive stuff. So you don't want to see someone bring a case or a lawyer bring a case against someone else that has no merit. If it lacks merit, which means it doesn't have facts giving rise under the law to a case, it's frivolous. So we'll see it in any industry. Wow. It can be the service industry. It can be restaurants, like you said. There are I've seen cases where a big box store, Target, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, where because of video, CCTV, you'll be able to see someone creating their own injury, which that's a frivolous lawsuit. So oftentimes, a big box store will reach out if there's a potential claim or we think there's a potential claim that we're investigating, say, hey, may want to take a look at this video first. And there are cases, thank God we've never had anything like that, but where folks will spill something, look over their left, look over the right, and walk into the spill and say, my back hurts. No joke. That happens.
No way.
So that is a frivolous case. That is a frivolous lawsuit, right?
That really happens.
That happens. So that's not a case we'd ever take, obviously.
Right.
But there are times where you get into a case and you're like, whoa, I thought it was different. It is different. These facts have really impacted how I view the case,
right?
And whether or not I can proceed because we have to have facts under the law that give rise to the case. So that's just one of many examples where there unfortunately is fraud that happens,
right?
And that's why you have to have a lawyer that will look at it with reasonable lens, because we always say we're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Like, we're trying to follow the facts to
Yeah.
figure out what is right.
Right.
And if someone created their own injury, a lot of times that's a frivolous case.
So what happened? Is it possible that somebody can call you? It sounds like an incredible case. Like,
Sure.
hey, I got hurt. I was walking down the aisle of, let's use Lowe's as an example, Home
Sure.
Depot, whoever.
Yeah.
And then is like one of the first questions you ask is for that footage, or can you be going months? You think it's a great case, and then all of a sudden the lie comes out where, no, here's the footage. They spilled the coffee themselves.
Right. Yes.
Can that happen?
Absolutely. And a lot of times, the
Jeez.
most willing insurance companies, or the insurance companies represent the big box stores, and usually that's either by a team of lawyers or adjusters. And the more willing they are to share the video, usually is the indicator that it's not a case.
Yeah.
So if they're not willing to share the video, I'm like, okay, something's here. Because oftentimes without a lawsuit, they're not going to give their CCTV just to a lawyer just because we asked for it. It requires often a lawsuit.
Wow.
So if there is something fishy,
Yeah.
usually they'll say, look at the video, take a look at the video. And we'll look at the video, and we may still disagree. Oh, well, actually, that is a case.
Yeah.
But they want to share the video to try to cut a lawyer off from even pursuing the case. If they say, I'm not going to share the video, then I know it's bad. I know it's bad. Or if they say, as a policy, we don't share it,
Yeah.
I know that, because I was on the defense side, I know that there's a reason behind that. And so we usually figure out that reason, but it's not until we get into litigation. And now for the first time, I may get that. I may look at it. I may look at the video and think, holy smokes, like, this is not good for my client.
Right.
Or I may get the video and say, this is lights out, great case. We're pursuing it with everything we got.
And has that happened?
Absolutely.
With you?
Yeah, of course.
So you were able to get footage, but after you filed a lawsuit,
That's right.
then you get the footage.
Exactly.
Have you had to go both ways where like you got the footage and it was incredible,
Yes.
and then have you had it go where you got the footage and it flopped, or it was a bad thing?
Well, sure. I mean, thankfully, I've gotten footage where I've never gotten footage that says, okay, we're out of this case.
Got it.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
And usually it's because we're very rigorous before we even get there to figure out what happened, how it happened, to orient to the scene,
Yeah.
to understand the mechanism of injury, to really ferret out whether or not it's a case. But so I thankfully have not had that happen where I get the video and it's like, oh no, this is not a case, we need to get out.
Right.
That being said, on the other side, I have gotten a video and it was intimated to me throughout the entire process, this is not that bad of a case. This is not that big of a deal. You need to, move on, Mr. Lawyer. I get the video, and I'm like,
And it's like,
you want to talk about frivolous lawsuit? There's also frivolous defense, right? Where it's, we're saying that there's nothing here. We're completely innocent.
wow.
We figure out that they're actually not, and then we work it up.
Is there a penalty for them for acting that way?
There can be.
For they were sort of withholding, I guess, at a
There
point.
can be, absolutely. Yeah, so
Wow.
there are penalties like through the court system almost in every state.
Yeah.
If you withhold evidence or if you're not forthright in your discovery responses,
Yeah.
that you can get what we call sanctions against that entity.
Yeah.
And there are different ramifications for those sanctions
Yeah.
that a judge has the absolute discretion over.
Okay.
And so they have the discretion to say, yes, that was unfair, you should have given that earlier, sooner, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, there are penalties for that for sure. So the
Okay.
system, I will say, is very fair in the sense that it's really seeking good actors on both sides. Like, how can we get to the bottom of it? In every case, we're on a fact-finding mission. There are things that go our way,
Yeah.
factually. There are
Yeah.
things that don't go our way, factually.
Sure.
And we want to understand what the facts are that gave rise to our clients' injuries, one way or the other.
Right.
Good, bad, and ugly.
Right.
So, but video is a huge part of that. For
That's
sure.
a huge part. What about, so we're still on the first segment here, the definition and getting clarity around this frivolous stuff. So what about the business owner out there
Yep.
who lives in a lot of fear? They do, right? And I know from being in different entrepreneurial circles, like
Sure.
they're constantly in fear of getting a lawsuit filed against them because they hear a lot of times threats that usually don't amount to anything,
Sure.
but like, you didn't take this back and I'm going to leave you a bad review and call my lawyer.
Right.
So there's a lot of like, I'm going to call my lawyer.
Right.
Is there some peace of mind for the business owner out there listening to this that like you're not just going to get a lawsuit dropped on your doorstep for silly little stuff. Is there any protection or any advice you would give?
Just insurance. Just make sure you get as much insurance as you can afford as a business owner.
Yeah.
So get as much as you can afford. It's consider it a business expense, and that will help ease your mind. Unfortunately, we live in a society where anybody can sue anybody about anything at any time.
Yeah.
And so that it's important to be cognizant of that reality as a business owner.
Right.
But it's also important to make sure you have enough insurance to protect yourself, your assets, your family, your other employees, and so forth. So that's always my big recommendation is just get insurance as much as you can afford.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have a litigious relationship against insurance companies, right? Because I'm advocating on people that are trying to recover insurance.
Sure.
But I'm also a business owner, and it's important to know as a business owner that you always have to be looking out for that, protecting your business, and the best way to do that is through insurance. But it's also just having good policies, right? Like making sure you have good policies and procedures, what to do in the event of an incident, how to take care of your employees, making sure you've got good policies and procedures throughout the corporation, the firm, to make sure your employees are following those things, and then documenting that they are following those things.
Yeah.
That's extremely important, I think, at least to have some peace of mind. We live in such a litigious society now.
Sure.
So people are always threatening lawsuits. There'll always be that. And maybe now more than ever, like, okay, no problem, I'll sue you for whatever.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's right. But if and when that happens, and usually I say if you're impacting enough people over time, you're probably going to get sued at some point for something, even if it's not meritorious. You're going to catch a case. Don't panic if you ever catch a case, but make sure that you also have done the things that you need to do to take care of the business and others.
Helpful. Great. Let's talk now two examples. So both sides of the spectrum. Give me two, whether you've tried them personally or been involved or just famous ones out there.
McDonald's is always the big case, right? Because they got a big verdict because they had hot coffee spilled on them. And ultimately, if you see the Netflix and all of that, they actually didn't really recover much at all after the appellate phase and all the lawyers that came in there. So a lot of behind the curtain inside info on that is like they just didn't really recover that much after it was all said and done. So that whether or not that was a frivolous case, I mean, I'll let the Netflix speak for itself, but I do think that there are cases where plaintiffs, like we represent, people that are harmed, can take more responsibility or can take some responsibility for their own actions. In that case, how you grab the cup, you ensure that the lid's on. How do you see steam coming off? Those type of things.
Sure.
But the corporation also has an opportunity and responsibility to make sure that the lid's on, to make sure that they hand it off properly, and because at the end of the day, you're in business to protect your customers and to give them a good experience. So that was a frivolous case. The outcome wasn't as salacious as marketed. Ultimately, when it came down to the result for that individual. So that's a great example, though, of that is perceptively a very shocking, frivolous type case. What I see in my practice all the time are cases that you would think might be frivolous, but actually when you start pulling back the layers are not. So and almost always I see this in low property damage, like in vehicle cases, where somebody takes a big pop from another vehicle, tractor trailer, something like that. But not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily destroy the vehicle from like the first photograph that's taken, okay? So maybe the property damage optically isn't a crushed can, and manufacturers are building cars in incredible ways and sturdy and so forth. But the property damage is so little that if you look at a picture and you're like, how are you saying that you needed a surgery based on the property damage to the vehicle? A lot of times people don't understand, like, well, the impact was so hard, it broke the frame, it's a total loss. A lot of times folks don't understand that there's tailgates on the tailgate. There's all kinds of things that may have caused the impact to the vehicle to, like, have zero property damage. But sometimes, whether it's a juror or an adjuster or an attorney, they're like, there's no property damage here. Well, how fast was the person going that it hit them? How much of an impact was it? Where was the body, the person's body on the inside of the vehicle that took the impact? Was it twisted already? Were they looking over their shoulder? Did it catch them in the wrong spot? Did it cause a tear?
Wow.
There are different biomechanics that go into those things. But I think perceptively you think, and I'll even look at a photo and I'll be like, that photo there's no property damage to that vehicle. Like, I know there was impact, but how is this not a frivolous case? Like, how are they saying that? But you look at things like medical records. Did they treat? Where did they treat? How quickly did they treat after? When were they presenting symptoms? And once you start peeling back those layers, did they follow their doctor's recommendations? Had they been in prior incidents? Had they been hurt before? Were they already hurt? You know, there are different dynamics and layers to what you try to look at. And once you do that, like, you can see, yeah, this actually was a big impact. Like, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But also somebody's medical history after a bad wreck, even if the property damage is like nothing, that's also worth 1,000 words, and it's actually real, you know. So, and look, there are cases where there's a little tap in a parking lot that should not be brought, right, or it should not be hotly pursued,
right.
But that's just the facts.
Yeah.
But you have to get in there with the clients and with the people that have been injured to really explore, how bad is it? How bad is it? You know, and then you trust the medical professionals to say, yeah, that's actually based on that speed, that dynamic. That's very viable that they suffer the injury that they suffer.
So who should somebody go to then? Obviously, call the police. But if you've been hit, that's a good topic.
Sure.
Should you go to a doctor first to start the paper trail?
If you're hurt, yeah. Like, so if you're having symptoms, from
like, barring if an ambulance has to come and pick you up.
That's
I'm just
right.
saying, like,
Absolutely.
if you're okay, but you do have some pain.
Yes.
You doctor?
You only get one body. You only get one body,
Yeah.
right? So if you suspect that you have some symptoms that are presenting themselves in a way that it's like, man, I am hurt, and or I feel something off with my body, go call a doctor.
Yeah.
Go. And a lot of times, because adrenaline or because other reasons, like, they don't present until the next morning you wake up.
Yeah.
And adrenaline has subsided, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh no,
Right.
like, it's hard to get out of bed right now.
Yeah.
I would always say, even if the ambulance doesn't respond, low impact collision, ticket gets written, police parties go their ways.
Sure.
But you're still having like some kind of symptoms after the fact.
Yeah.
Absolutely call.
Yeah.
And then I always say, just follow the recommendations of your medical provider. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I don't pretend to be, but I do know that, you know, good care is needed oftentimes after wrecks, and even symptoms can present themselves a couple days after.
Yeah.
For somebody that's been in a wreck that wasn't that way before the wreck.
And that won't, okay, that makes sense, but that won't affect the case negatively or positively if I go to a provider. Like, I didn't have to call the police, then number two, get a lawyer to tell me I had to go. Then, like, I don't have to follow a list, or the case gets thrown out if there was a case.
No, not at all. Like,
got it.
In I always say, if you need treatment, get it. Like, go get treatment. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times we don't get involved until months after a wreck happens, and somebody's been going through this process of trying to rehabilitate and get better, and you know, or they broke something, or they just had a horrible TBI, concussion.
Yeah.
And we get involved late, so I'm not even really engaged in the medical process until I get the medical file and have a better understanding.
Got
of
it.
what
They're
what
under
they've gone
care
through.
already.
That's right.
Is there any, last question on this, but it's so
love it.
intriguing. Is there anybody they can go see that would affect the case negatively? Such as, I just heard this, if you go see a chiropractor, that can hurt because, I guess, if they're not an MD, that type of thing. Like, so now they start seeing you for pain, and they're giving you whatever adjustment, and they're not looking at it holistically.
Yes.
Can that hurt the case?
It depends. I mean, I wouldn't say just by virtue of having a chiropractor. I mean, people love their chiropractor. Like, some people have lifetime chiropractors. They love them. They visit them. They get adjustments. You know, my paralegal's married to an amazing chiropractor. We have a guy that we know him well, and we love to hear about what he does and to help people. So I would say, from a chiropractor's perspective, if somebody has a chiropractor that they want to go see, that's fine. I'm of the mindset that it is good initially or ultimately to go see a medical doctor, because they can put hands on in a way, do scans that need to be done, make sure that everything's in its proper place.
Yeah.
for more of a long-term care fit.
MRI,
Exactly.
and CT, and all that stuff.
Because again, you only get one body. Make sure that that impact doesn't impact other areas of your life, and that you can continue to go on. And sometimes a simple scan will tell you that. And or some things that just a doctor's trained to draw out of you, and they're subjective, like when they're talking to a patient. So I would always say, if you have been hurt and need to go to the hospital and feel like you need to go to the hospital, go to the hospital. No problem. As far as a follow-up, I would say look for an orthopedic doctor, depending on what the need is. Go to a medical doctor for a follow-up, just to make sure everything's okay. Everything's in its right place, because you don't want to mess with that, right?
Awesome. Very, very helpful. Okay, last takeaway. So you've got people out there across all over the place. You got the person who calls, maybe they overcall. They get a little stub toe, and it happened at CVS, and they want to call you and you got that person. But then you got people that just aren't going to call, and hopefully this message makes it to them, or this podcast makes it to them, because they should all call, really. But I think a lot of people, myself included, would be like, oh man, if I call a lawyer, the meter starts the second somebody says hello, and it's going to be an $1,100 phone call. I fear that, right?
Yes.
Set us all straight, across the board.
So there are lawyers that when you call them, the meter starts. On the personal injury side, where we help folks that have been catastrophically hurt, family members of somebody that lost a loved one, we do not bill our hours. In other words, when you call me, the clock's not running. And in fact, I probably talked to 5, 6 individuals that have potential clients with potential cases, and I'm not charging them for my time.
A day? Like 5, 6 a day?
Absolutely.
Are you saying?
Or other lawyers that say, hey, I've got a case.
What do you think
about this? About this? Would you consider coming on? So constantly having those conversations. I don't punch a clock and say, all right, you're on the clock. I'm going to send you a bill for my advice. Or for my consult. So that is a common misconception, because I work on a contingency fee, which means I'm incentivized to get you as a potential client the best possible result.
Okay.
Because I don't get paid unless the client gets paid, and I get paid last.
Okay.
Right? So you're not on the clock. There are some scenarios where another lawyer that I'm against acts improperly, and I can bill hours in that regard. But that's as to the other lawyer, right?
Not to the client.
Yes, exactly, not to the client.
Got it.
So that I'm so glad you brought that up, because people are like, if I call a lawyer, am I going to be in the red just for making the call? For us, no. Like, we're doing consultations all the time. Those are free, right? Those are part of the process to determine if somebody has a case.
Right.
And we do that literally, like I said, multiple times a day. Multiple times
awesome.
a day. So I say all that to say, like, I've literally had a family that had a catastrophic injury, literally leg, no leg anymore. Like, got hit, doesn't have a leg, okay? And they were initially hesitant to call a lawyer because they had a great case. But they're like, we are not litigious people. We don't want to call a lawyer. If we call a lawyer, are they going to charge us? There are common misconceptions for those that have gone through a traumatic event, because they're like, I don't like to sue people, and we may have to sue people. That happens all the time. And so I'm so thankful to meet folks like that, because we don't want litigious clients, for one, that's already had 6 cases before we ever meet them. One, but two, I love their heart and their spirit to say, look, something really bad has happened to me, and I need help and direction. And a lot of times I say, hey, just so you know, I'm not charging you for this conversation. Like, this is a conversation for me to get to know you and to understand what happened, and to see if I can advise you and represent you, zealously. Does that make sense?
That's incredible, man. I hope this gets to just so many people, because I think the lion's share of people think a meter's running. So I'm glad to hear that. Just unpack, last thing, what does contingency actually mean?
Contingent on the recovery. So, in other words, if no recovery, I don't charge a fee. So there are times where
nothing, no hidden anything.
I can spend 10,000 hours and $10,000 just trying to see if there's a case.
Right.
And if I don't come back with a gross recovery, there is no fee. The client owes me nothing, and that's expenses and any expenses that I've vested in the case, and a percentage, the
Okay.
contingency percentage.
Got it.
So our contingency is a percentage off of that gross amount
Off of the recovery.
of the recovery. Exactly.
And no backdated, like, hey, since we won, I'm also going to throw in the first hour of coffee that we had at my place to see if there was a case. Like,
No.
There's no backdating or back
No, it's
billing
when
or
we
anything.
sign. Yeah, it's when we sign.
That's
So,
incredible.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
Absolutely.
Great.
Hey, that was awesome. Yeah,
That was great.
absolutely.